winds of Winterfell howled like wolves, their voices weaving through ancient stone towers, carrying tales of honor and ice. For Jon Snow, they whispered something darker: shame. Born the bastard son of Eddard Stark, Lord of the North, Jon was a shadow in a house of wolves, his name a mark of dishonor in the frozen land he called home. At 14, he stood lean and wiry, dark hair framing gray eyes that held a quiet storm, a storm that churned beneath a calm exterior. His skill with a sword matched Robb's, his true-born brother, their blades clashing in the courtyard with a rhythm like thunder. Yet no prowess could erase the word snow, a syllable that clung to him like frost, chilling every step he took in Winterfell's hallowed halls. Winterfell was a world unto itself, a fortress of gray stone and steaming springs, its godswood a sanctuary of silence. The heart tree stood at its center, its weirwood branches heavy with snow, its carved face weeping red sap like blood. Jon would sit there for hours, his breath clouding in the cold, carving sticks into crude figures of knights and dragons. The tree's eyes seemed to watch him, knowing his secret heart, a heart that yearned for a place beyond the sidelong glances of servants, beyond the weight of being less. Robb, golden-haired and bold, was heir to Winterfell, his laughter filling the great hall. Sansa, with her auburn braids, dreamed of southern courts, her songs soft as summer. Arya, fierce and untamed, was Jon's mirror, her defiance a spark that lit his own. Bran scaled walls with reckless joy. Rickon toddled after wolves, but Jon was the outsider, loved yet never fully claimed. The great hall was a stage for Winterfell's life, its long tables laden with venison and ale, banners of the direwolf fluttering above. Jon sat at a lower table during feasts, the warmth of the hearth just out of reach. Lady Catelyn, Ned's wife, presided like a queen, her beauty cold as the wall itself. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, passed over Jon as if he were a stain on the Stark legacy. He felt her gaze like a blade, each glance a reminder. You are not mine, nor Winterfell's. Ned, seated at the high table, watched Jon with a warmth that both comforted and confused. You are a Stark, Ned had said once, his hand heavy on Jon's shoulder, gray eyes steady. The words were a lifeline, yet they couldn't drown out the whispers. Bastard, half-blood, unwanted. Jon's refuge was the courtyard, where steel sang louder than whispers. He sparred with Robb under the watchful eye of Sir Roderick Castle, Winterfell's master-at-arms. Their wooden swords cracked, dust rising in clouds, Robb's grin fierce but kind. You're too good for a bastard, Robb teased, dodging a blow. Jon smirked, lunging, their dance a bond no title could break. Arya watched from the sidelines, her own wooden sword clutched tight. Teach me, she demanded, eyes blazing. Jon obliged, guiding her small hands, her laughter a rare light in his world. You're better than all of them, she said, voice fierce. Jon ruffled her hair, wishing he could believe her. Nights were harder. In his chamber, a small room off the main keep, Jon lay awake, the wind's song seeping through stone. He imagined a life where he was no bastard, a lord, a knight, a man with a name. The north stretched beyond Winterfell, vast and wild, its secrets buried in snow. Jon's heart pulled him toward it, toward a purpose greater than carving sticks or dodging Catelyn's scorn. He'd heard tales of the Wall, a barrier of ice guarding the realm from savages and shadows. The Night's Watch sworn to protect was a mystery cloaked in black, its brothers bound by oaths, not blood. The spark came with Benjen Stark's arrival. Ned's younger brother, a ranger of the Night's Watch, rode into Winterfell, his black cloak dusted with frost, his face weathered but kind. At a feast, Benjen sat with Jon, ale mug in hand, his stories painting a world beyond. "The Watch is no place for lords," he said, voice low. "But for men with courage, it's a brotherhood. Birth means nothing there, only what you do." Jon's pulse quickened, the words igniting a fire. The Night's Watch offered escape, a chance to be more than a bastard shadow. He saw himself in black, sword in hand, guarding the realm from terrors unknown. The idea took root, growing with each passing day until it was all he could see. The decision was made in the solar, where Ned worked by candlelight, maps and letters strewn across his desk. Jon stood tall, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. "I want to join the Night's Watch," he said. Ned's quill paused, his face tightening. A shadow crossed his gray eyes. Pain, perhaps, or regret. "It's a hard life, Jon," he said, voice low. "No family, no lands, no children. You'd swear an oath for life." Jon met his gaze, unflinching. "I have no lands here, father, no place but what I make." Ned studied him, then nodded, slow and heavy. "Go with my blessing," he said, the words heavy with unspoken weight. Jon bowed, his heart a mix of relief and ache. The godswood was his farewell. Snow fell softly, blanketing the heart tree's red face. Arya found him there, her braid askew, eyes fierce with unshed tears. "Don't forget me," she whispered, pressing a carved wooden wolf into his hand, its edges rough from her knife. Jon pulled her into a hug, her small frame trembling. "Never, little sister," he said, ruffling her hair. Robb clasped his arm in the courtyard, his grin forced. "Stay sharp, Jon." Sansa offered a shy smile. Bran a wave, Rickon a puzzled stare. Catelyn watched from a window, her silence louder than words. Jon mounted his horse, Winterfell's towers fading as he rode north, the carved wolf heavy in his pocket. The road to Castle Black was a ribbon of frost, winding through hills dusted with snow. The wall appeared on the horizon, a titan of ice, 700 feet high, its surface shimmering like glass. Jon's breath caught, awe mingling with dread. Castle Black was no grand fortress, but a sprawl of crumbling stone, its towers sagging under time's weight. The men were not knights, but outcasts, thieves, rapers, men fleeing shame or death. Sir Alistair Thorne, a knight-turned-taskmaster, greeted Jon with a sneer. "Lord Snow, come to grace us with your bastard's honor," he mocked, his voice dripping venom. Jon's jaw tightened, but he held his tongue. This was his choice, his chance. His first night was cold, the straw pallet in the barracks barely softening the stone floor. The wind howled, rattling shutters, carrying whispers of the north beyond. Jon clutched Arya's wolf, its rough edges grounding him. He was no longer Ned Stark's son, no longer a bastard of Winterfell. He was a recruit of the Night's Watch, a man forging his own path. The wall loomed outside, its ice a promise and a warning. Whatever lay ahead, wildlings, cold, or shadows, Jon would face it. His journey had begun, carved in snow and steel. Castle Black was a crucible of ice and grit, its walls steeped in the weight of centuries, each stone whispering of men who'd stood against the dark. Jon Snow, barely 15, woke each dawn to a world of frost, his breath clouding in the dim barracks. The air was sharp, cutting through his cloak as he stepped into the training yard, where Sir Alistair Thorne's voice rang like a whip. "Lord Snow!" Thorne barked, his gaunt face twisted in scorn. "Think your bastard's blood makes you better than this rabble?" Jon's grip tightened on his practice sword, his gray eyes steady. He parried blows from recruits, his blade a blur, each strike a defiance of Thorne's taunts. The other men, hardened, broken, or desperate, watched with suspicion, seeing in Jon their own shame reflected. A bastard was no stranger to their world, yet his skill set him apart. A spark of stark honor in a place that despised it. Friendship came quietly, like snow settling on stone. Samwell Tarly arrived, a lord's son from the Reach, plump and trembling, his eyes wide with fear. Thorn targeted him mercilessly, his jeers drawing bloodless wounds. "Piggy!" Thorn spat, as Sam fumbled his sword. Jon saw kindness in Sam, a softness that didn't belong in Castle Black's harshness. During drills, Jon stepped in, taking blows meant for Sam, his voice low. "Stay near me." Sam's gratitude was wordless, a nod through chattering teeth. Gren, broad and slow, joined them, his strength a counterpoint to Sam's frailty. Pip, wiry and quick with jests, brought laughter to their circle. In the mess hall, over bowls of watery stew, they shared stories. Sam's of books, Gren's of farms, Pip's of thieving. "We're the misfits," Pip grinned, raising a mug. "But misfits stick together." Jon smiled, the ache of Winterfell easing, replaced by a warmth he hadn't expected. Lord Commander Jean Mormont, a bear of a man with a grey beard and piercing eyes, watched Jon from the high table. His presence was a mountain, steady amid Castle Black's chaos. One evening, he summoned Jon to his solar, where a fire crackled, casting shadows on stone walls. Maps and raven scrolls cluttered the desk, the air thick with the scent of ink. "You're Ned Stark's son," Mormont said, voice gruff but not unkind. "Blood means nothing here, boy, but honor does. Your father had it. Do you?" Jon met his gaze, heart pounding. "I'll try, Lord Commander." Mormont slid a longsword across the table, its scabbard worn but gleaming. "Longclaw," he said. "Valyrian steel. Mine once. Now yours." Jon's fingers traced the blade, its pommel a white wolf, eyes red as the weirwood. The weight was a promise, a burden. "I won't fail you," Jon said, voice firm. Mormont nodded, a faint smile beneath his beard. "See that you don't." The wall was a world apart, its ice stretching to the sky, a barrier to the North's secrets. Jon stood atop it, wind biting his face, the land beyond a sea of white dotted with twisted trees. Tales of wildlings, savages who roamed free, filtered through the barracks, mingled with darker whispers of creatures from legend, things of ice and shadow. Castle Black's routine grounded him. Dawn drills, evening patrols, nights by the fire with Sam's quiet tales. Jon wrote to Arya in his mind, words of the wall's grandeur, of his new brothers. The letters went unsent, but they steadied him, a thread to Winterfell's warmth. A raven brought ruin. Ned Stark, executed for treason in King's Landing, was dead. The news struck Jon like a blade, his knees buckling in the mess hall. His father, the pillar of honor, gone, beheaded on a southern whim. Robb, now Lord of Winterfell, marched to war, crowned king in the north by loyal bannermen. Jon's world tilted, grief turning to rage. The Watcher's oath bound him to the wall, but his heart screamed for Winterfell, for Robb, for vengeance. He sat alone in the armory, Longclaw across his lap, its wolf eyes glinting. I could ride south, he thought, join Robb, fight for father's name. The thought was fire burning through his vows. Under moonlight, Jon acted. He saddled a horse, its hooves muffled in snow, and rode south, Castle Black shrinking behind him. The wall's shadow faded, the north opening wide, Winterfell a beacon in his mind. Arya's face, her carved wolf, urged him on. He'd be no oath-breaker, he told himself. Just a son avenging his father. The stars watched, cold and silent, as he pushed through frost, the wind carrying echoes of his oath. He didn't get far. Torches flickered in the distance, voices calling his name. Sam, Gren, and Pip had followed, their cloaks flapping in the wind. Sam's face was flushed, his breath ragged. "You swore, Jon," he said, voice soft but firm. Gren blocked the path, his bulk unyielding. Pip, for once without jests, stared with quiet resolve. Together, they chanted the oath, their voices rising above the wind. "Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I am the sword in the darkness, the watcher on the walls." Jon's shoulders sagged, the fire in him cooling. Ned was gone, but these men, misfits, brothers, were his family now. He turned back, the snow swallowing his tracks, the wall looming once more. Castle Black greeted him with thorns sharpened scorn. "Thought you'd run, Lord Snow," he sneered, his eyes gleaming with malice. Jon bore it, his jaw tight, his focus on the yard. He trained harder. Longclaw a blur in his hands, each swing a vow to prove himself. Mormont called him to the wall's edge one dawn, pointing north. "The true fight is out there," he said, voice like gravel. "Wildlings, maybe worse. You're ready for it, Snow." Jon nodded, the oath burning in his chest. He was no lord, no bastard, just a brother of the Watch, forged in snow and steel. The godswood beyond the wall became his sanctuary, a cluster of weirwoods hidden in a frozen grove. Jon knelt before one, its red eyes carved deep, snow dusting its branches. He spoke the oath alone, the words a tribute to Ned's memory. "I am the shield that guards the realms of men." The wind answered, fierce and cold, carrying whispers of dangers unseen. Jon rose, Longclaw at his side, its wolf eyes catching the dawn. The north was his to guard, its secrets his to face. Whatever lay beyond, man, beast, or shadow, he would meet it head-on, a brother sworn to the night. The north beyond the wall was a land of ice and secrets, its frozen plains stretching beneath a sky heavy with storm. Jon Snow, 16 and cloaked in black, rode with the night's watch, his breath clouding in the biting air. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont led the ranging, a band of brothers seeking wildlings and answers to whispers of darkness stirring in the frost. Longclaw hung at Jon's side, its wolf pommel a reminder of Winterfell, now a distant dream. The wall faded behind them, its ice a faint shimmer on the horizon, and the world grew wilder with each step. Snow crunched under hooves, trees twisted like skeletal hands, and the wind carried a chill that sank into bone. Jon's gray eyes scanned the horizon, alert for danger, his heart heavy with the oath he'd sworn. The ranging was no grand march, but a slog through snowdrifts, the men's faces etched with cold and fear. Mormont's voice was steady, urging them onward, but Jon sensed unease in the veterans. Tales of wildlings, free folk who scorned the laws of Westeros, mingled with older stories, of things that walked in the dark, eyes glowing like ice. At Craster's Keep, a wretched hovel of mud and bone, they found shelter but no warmth. Craster, a wildling who wed his daughters, greeted them with a sneer, his eyes glinting with cunning. "Keep your swords sheathed," he growled, offering gruel and a roof. Jon's stomach churned at Craster's ways, his daughter's fearful glances a silent plea. Mormont forbade interference, but Jon's hand twitched toward Longclaw, honor warring with disgust. Danger struck in a blur of spears. Wildlings ambushed the ranging, their cries piercing the silence. Jon fought, Longclaw flashing, but numbers overwhelmed them. He was seized, wrists bound, and dragged to a camp of hide tents and roaring fires. There, he met Ygritte, a spearwife with hair like flame, her green eyes sharp as flint. "You know nothing, Jon Snow," she teased, her voice a mix of scorn and spark. Her bow was drawn, but her smile disarmed him. Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, stood before Jon, his presence commanding, a bard turned warlord. "Why should I spare you?" Mance asked, his gaze piercing. Jon's mind raced, the Watch's mission at stake. Qhorin Halfhand, a legendary ranger captured with Jon, whispered a plan. "Join them," Qhorin urged, his voice low. "Learn their ways. Warn the Watch." To prove loyalty, Jon would have to kill Qhorin, a staged betrayal to win Mance's trust. The act was a wound to Jon's soul. In a snowy clearing, their swords clashed, Qhorin's eyes steady, urging Jon on. With a cry, Jon drove Longclaw through Qhorin's heart, the ranger's blood staining the snow. Mance nodded, accepting Jon into the wildling ranks, but Ygritte's gaze lingered, curious and knowing. Jon's heart pounded, guilt a heavy chain. He was no longer just a brother of the Watch. He was a spy, walking a razor's edge. Life among the wildlings was raw, untamed. Their camp sprawled across a valley, tents stitched from hides, fires spitting sparks into the night. Mance planned to storm the wall, uniting clans with a dream of freedom. Jon marched with them, his black cloak traded for furs, Ygritte at his side. She was a storm, her laughter bright, her taunts relentless. "You're still a crow," she'd say, poking his chest, but her touch lingered, warm against the cold. Jon's oath weighed heavy, its words a shadow. "I shall take no wife, hold no lands." Yet Ygritte's presence stirred something he couldn't name, a fire that burned through his vows. One night, they found refuge in a cave, its walls glistening with water, a hidden spring steaming in the dark. Ygritte shed her furs, her skin pale in the dim light, her eyes daring him. "You know nothing, Jon Snow," she whispered, pulling him close. Their lips met, a collision of heat and hunger, the world fading to the sound of dripping water and racing hearts. "I don't want to leave this cave," Jon murmured, his voice raw. For a moment he was no spy, no crow, just a boy in love, the oath a distant echo. Ygritte's fingers traced his scars, her laugh soft. "You're mine," she said, and Jon wanted to believe it. Duty was a cruel master. Mance's plans grew clear. Thousands would assault Castle Black, overwhelming the Watch. Jon's mission demanded betrayal. At dawn, he stole a horse, riding hard for the wall, Ygritte's shouts behind him. Arrows flew, one piercing his leg, pain flaring with each gallop. He glanced back, her red hair a beacon in the snow, her face torn between love and rage. "Forgive me," he thought, but the words were lost to the wind. Castle Black loomed, its gates a salvation and a cage. Jon stumbled through, blood soaking his furs, and collapsed. His warning gasped out, "They're coming." The Watch gathered, faces grim, as Jon's vision darkened, Ygritte's voice echoing. "You know nothing." The betrayal cut deeper than the arrow. Jon lay in the infirmary, Maester Aemon tending his wound, his mind a storm of guilt. Qhorin's blood, Ygritte's pain, each was a mark on his soul. The Watch was his duty, but the wildling's dream of freedom lingered, a challenge to all he'd sworn. As he drifted to sleep, Longclaw beside him, Jon wondered if honor was worth the cost. The wall stood ready, but so did his heart, torn between worlds. Jon's choice to betray Ygritte is a wound that lingers. Would you have stayed with the wildlings or returned to the Watch? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join our journey through Westeros by subscribing for more Game of Thrones tales. Castle Black braced for war, its walls a frail shield against the storm gathering beyond. Jon Snow, barely healed, stood in the yard, his leg aching where Ygritte's arrow had struck. The Wildlings were coming, Mance Rayder's army a tide of spears and fury, their numbers dwarfing the Night's Watch. The air was thick with tension, brothers sharpening swords, archers stringing bows, their faces etched with dread. Jon, 17 now, felt the weight of his warning, his betrayal of Ygritte a shadow in his heart. Longclaw hung at his side, its wolf pommel glinting in the torchlight, a reminder of duty over love. The wall loomed above, its ice a cold sentinel, but it was the men below who would decide the night. Sir Alliser Thorne, acting commander, barked orders, his scorn for Jon sharper than ever. "Lord Snow thinks he's saved us," Thorne sneered, "but he's brought death to our door." Jon ignored him, helping Samwell Tarly stack arrows, his friend's hands trembling. "We're too few," Sam whispered, eyes wide. Jon gripped his shoulder. "We hold, or we die." The watch numbered less than 100, against thousands of wildlings. Mormont was gone, slain on the ranging, leaving Thorne's brittle leadership. Jon's training with Longclaw, his knights atop the wall, had forged him for this moment. He was no lord, but he'd fight as one. The attack came at dusk, a roar from the north shattering the silence. Wildlings surged from the trees, their war horns bellowing, spears glinting under a blood-red sky. Jon climbed to the wall's top, wind tearing at his cloak as arrows rained upward. Below, Mance's army spread like a sea, fires sparking as they set ladders against the ice. "Archers!" Jon shouted, his voice carrying over the chaos. Bows twanged, sending wildlings tumbling, but more came, relentless. Giants roared, their clubs battering the wall's base, the ice shuddering under their might. Jon's heart pounded, Longclaw drawn, its steel a comfort in the dark. The battle was a blur of blood and steel. Jon directed archers, his orders sharp, his eyes scanning for Mance's banners. Sam manned a trebuchet, hurling stones that crushed wildling ranks. Gren and Pip fought below, their swords flashing in torchlight. The wall held, but the cost was high. Brothers fell, their screams swallowed by the wind. Jon's leg burned, but he moved through the pain, rallying men with a voice that carried Winterfell's strength. "For the Watch!" he roared, and the cry echoed a fragile defiance against the tide. Then he saw her, Ygritte, her red hair unmistakable, climbing a ladder with bow in hand. Jon froze, his breath catching. She reached the top, green eyes locking with his, her face a storm of love and betrayal. "Jon Snow," she said, voice soft, bow drawn but unsteady. Time slowed, the battle fading to a hum. He stepped forward, Longclaw lowered, words choking in his throat. "I'm sorry." Her arrow wavered, her lips parting. Before she could shoot, an arrow from another struck her chest, fired by a watch archer. Ygritte fell, blood blooming on her furs, her bow clattering to the ice. Jon caught her, dropping to his knees, her weight light in his arms. "Ygritte," he whispered, his voice breaking. Her eyes, dimming, held him. "You know nothing, Jon Snow," she murmured, a faint smile on her lips. Her breath stilled, her body limp, and Jon's world shattered. The battle raged, but he was lost in her, the fire of her hair, the warmth of her gone. He held her, snow falling around them, each flake a silent grief. Sam's hand on his shoulder pulled him back. "Jon, we need you," Sam said, voice urgent. Jon laid Ygritte down, her blood staining his hands, and rose, Longclaw heavy. Duty was a cruel master. The night stretched on, the wildlings relentless. Jon fought on the wall's edge, cutting down climbers, his sword a blur. Giants breached the gate below, their roars shaking the stone. Grenn led a stand, his courage a beacon, but the cost was grim. Jon's orders kept the defense alive, barrels of oil igniting wildling ranks, arrows finding their marks. Dawn was far, the watch's numbers dwindling, each loss a wound. Jon's legs screamed, his body pushed beyond limit, but he moved through the chaos, a Stark in all but name. Hope came with hooves. At first light a horn sounded, not wildling but southern. Stannis Baratheon's army, banners red and gold, swept from the south. Cavalry charged, scattering Mance's forces, their swords cutting through the dawn. Jon watched from the wall, relief warring with exhaustion. The wildlings broke, fleeing into the trees, their fires snuffed out. Stannis' men secured Castle Black, their leader stern, his eyes cold. Jon descended, meeting Stannis in the yard. "You held," Stannis said, voice like iron. Jon nodded, blood and soot on his face. At a cost. Mance was captured, his dream of freedom shattered. Jon faced him, Longclaw sheathed, offering peace. "Your people could live south of the wall," Jon said, voice hoarse. Mance's eyes were weary but proud. "Freedom's worth dying for," he replied. Stannis demanded submission, his terms harsh. Jon turned away, the weight of the night settling. The watch had survived, but the cost was etched in blood. Grenn's stand, Pip's wounds, Ygritte's life. Beyond the wall, Jon built a pyre for Ygritte, her body wrapped in furs. The flames rose, consuming her, her red hair a final blaze. Jon watched, tears freezing on his cheeks, the smoke curling toward a gray sky. She'd been his love, his betrayal, his lesson. The north whispered of colder threats, eyes glowing in the dark. But Jon's heart was heavy with her loss. He returned to Castle Black, Longclaw at his side, the watch his burden. The wall stood, but so did his grief, a wound that would not heal. Castle Black stood beneath the wall's looming shadow, its stones steeped in frost and the ghosts of fallen brothers. Jon Snow, barely 18, bore the weight of command, his black cloak heavy with new responsibility. Elected Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, the youngest in its history, he stood in Jor Mormont's solar, the fire crackling low, maps of the north spread before him. Longclaw rested against the desk, its wolf pommel catching the light, a silent reminder of duty. The victory against Mance Rayder's wildlings had saved the wall, but at a cost. Ygritte's death, Grenn's sacrifice, and a fractured brotherhood. Jon's gray eyes, once bright with purpose, now held a weariness, the scars of love and war etched deep. The north whispered of threats colder than wildlings, and Jon knew the true enemy waited beyond the ice. The watch was a shadow of itself, its numbers dwindled to a few score, their morale brittle. Sir Alliser Thorne, ever the thorn in Jon's side, challenged his every decision, his voice dripping venom. "Lord Snow, playing king," Thorne sneered in the mess hall, his allies nodding. Jon ignored him, focusing on Samwell Tarly, his friend and steward, who pored over ancient tomes. "There's something out there," Sam said, voice low, pointing to a passage about White Walkers, creatures of ice and death. Jon's jaw tightened. The tales were no longer myth. Craster's sons, left to the cold, had become something other, their eyes glowing blue. The wall was their shield, but it felt frail against the unknown. Jon's vision was bold, born of necessity. The wildlings, defeated but not broken, were men and women, not monsters. If the White Walkers came, they'd need every sword. He met Tormund Giantsbane, the wildling leader, in a tent beyond the wall, snow swirling outside. Tormund's red beard framed a wary grin. "You'd trust us, Crow?" he asked, axe in hand. Jon nodded, voice steady. "We fight together, or we die alone." Tormund laughed, a sound like thunder, and clasped Jon's arm. The deal was struck. Wildlings would pass through the wall, settling south, sworn to peace. Jon returned to Castle Black, the weight of his choice heavy. The watch muttered, Thorne's allies loudest, but Jon held firm. Honor demanded more than blind tradition. The decision sparked fire. In the shield hall, brothers shouted, their voices a storm. "Traitor!" one cried, slamming his fist. Thorne's eyes gleamed, fanning the flames. "You'd bed with savages, Snow?" Jon stood tall, Longclaw at his side. "The enemy isn't wildlings, it's death itself. We need them." Some nodded, swayed by his resolve, but others turned away, their trust shattered. Sam, ever loyal, stood by Jon, his quiet strength a balm. Maester Aemon, blind but wise, spoke softly in private. "You lead with your heart, Jon. It's both strength and peril." Jon clung to those words, the old man's voice a tether in the chaos. The true test came at Hardhome, a wildling settlement on the coast. Jon sailed with Tormund, a fleet of borrowed ships creaking through icy waters. The air was thick with salt and dread, the sky gray as slate. Hardhome was a sprawl of tents and driftwood. Thousands of wildlings gathered, their faces gaunt with fear. Jon spoke to their leaders, urging them south. "The wall will shield you," he promised, but doubt lingered in their eyes. Tormund's presence swayed some, his voice booming. "This crow's mad, but he's right." Thousands agreed, boarding ships, their children clutching furs. Then the mist came, cold and unnatural, swallowing the shore. Screams pierced the air, and the dead rose, whites, their eyes blue as frost, clawing through the living. Jon drew Longclaw, its steel singing, and fought beside Tormund, cutting through corpses that refused to fall. A white walker emerged, its form like carved ice, its spear glinting. Jon met it, Longclaw clashing, and struck true. The blade shattered the walker, its form exploding into shards. The sight rallied the wildlings, but the whites were endless, a tide of death. Jon and Tormund herded survivors to the ships, the sea their only escape. As they rowed away, the Night King appeared on the shore, his eyes locked on Jon. With a gesture, he raised the fallen, their blue eyes glowing. Jon's heart sank, the weight of Hardhome's loss crushing. Back at Castle Black, Jon's alliance with the wildlings fueled mutiny. Thorne and his allies whispered in the shadows, their hatred a poison. Jon worked late, signing orders by candlelight, Sam now sent to the citadel for training. The yard was quiet, snow falling soft. A boy approached, breathless. "A wildling's come. Says he knows Benjen Stark." Jon followed, hope flickering, his uncle, lost for years. The sign read, "Traitor, a trap." Thorne stepped from the dark, his dagger flashing. "For the watch!" he snarled, stabbing Jon's chest. Others joined, their blades relentless. Ollie, the boy Jon had trained, struck last, tears in his eyes. Jon fell, blood pooling in the snow, Longclaw beyond reach. The stars above faded, his breath a rattle. Castle Black, his home, had betrayed him, and darkness claimed its Lord Commander. The darkness was absolute, a void where time ceased, where Jon Snow was neither man nor memory. Cold gripped him, then fire, a searing light that tore through the black. He gasped, lungs burning, eyes snapping open to a stone ceiling. Castle Black's infirmary, lit by flickering candles, held him. Melisandre, the Red Priestess, stood over him, her ruby glowing at her throat, her chants fading. "The Lord of Light has returned you," she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and fear. Jon's chest ached, scars raw where daggers had struck. Longclaw lay beside him, its wolf eyes glinting. He was alive, but the weight of death lingered, a shadow in his soul. The Watch's oath, until my death, had ended. But what was he now? Jon rose, unsteady, his body a stranger. Davos Seaworth, Stannis' former knight, stood guard, his weathered face grim. "You're a miracle, lad," Davos said, handing Jon his cloak. The mutineers, Thorne, Ollie, and others, were locked in cells, their fate in Jon's hands. He walked to the yard, snow crunching underfoot, brothers staring as if he were a ghost. Tormund, Giant's Bane, waiting with Wildlings, clasped Jon's arm. "You're harder to kill than a bear," he grinned, but his eyes held worry. Jon's return was no victory. It was a fracture, the Watch divided, his leadership tainted by betrayal. Ygritte's absence, Hardhome's horrors, and now this resurrection weighed on him, each a chain. Justice came swiftly. In the yard under a gray sky, Jon faced the mutineers. Thorne's sneer was gone, replaced by defiance. "I'd do it again," he spat. "You betrayed the Watch." Ollie the boy looked away, his face pale. Jon's voice was steel. "You swore an oath, same as me." He drew Longclaw, its blade steady, and cut the ropes. The traitors dropped, their necks snapping, the crowd silent. Jon sheathed his sword, the act hollow. Justice didn't heal the wounds. Ned's honor, Ygritte's love, his own blood on the snow. He walked away, the Watch no longer his home. Sansa Stark arrived, a beacon from Winterfell's past. She rode into Castle Black, her auburn hair dusted with snow, her eyes carrying years of pain. Ramsay Bolton, the sadist who held Winterfell, had brutalized her. Jon embraced her, the first Stark he'd seen since leaving home. "We take it back," Sansa said, voice fierce. Jon hesitated. War was not his path, not after death. But Sansa's resolve, Arya's carved wolf in his pocket, stirred him. Winterfell was theirs, the North their birthright. Jon agreed, the Watch behind him, a new fight ahead. The North was a fractured land, its houses scattered by war. Jon and Sansa sought allies, their banners few. At Bear Island, Lyanna Mormont, a girl of 10, stared them down. "House Stark is dead," she said. But Sansa's plea and Jon's honor swayed her. "I'll fight for the North," Lyanna declared, her small voice a spark. Other houses, Glover, Serwyn, joined, their numbers growing but still thin. Ramsay's army, bolstered by Boltons and Karstarks, loomed large. Winterfell a fortress of cruelty. Jon's plan was desperate. Draw Ramsay out, fight on open ground. Sansa warned of his cunning, her scars a testament, but Jon's resolve hardened. The Battle of the Bastards was a crucible of blood and mud. Jon stood before Winterfell's gates, his army of wildlings, Northmen, and Loyalists outnumbered. Ramsay rode forth, Rickon Stark, Jon's youngest brother, his prisoner. "Run!" Ramsay taunted, loosing Rickon. Jon spurred his horse, arrows flying, as Rickon sprinted toward him. An arrow struck Rickon's heart, his body falling yards away. Jon roared, grief and rage blinding him, and charged alone. His army followed, crashing into Bolton spears, the field a chaos of steel and screams. Jon fought like a man possessed, Longclaw carving through shields, mud sucking at his boots. Ramsay's phalanx closed, bodies piling, Jon trapped in a crush of flesh. He gasped, lungs burning, death near. Horns sounded. Sansa's gamble, Knights of the Vale, led by Littlefinger, swept in, their lances breaking Bolton lines. Jon broke free, his eyes on Ramsay, who fled to Winterfell. Jon pursued, battering the gates, his fists bloody. Inside, he faced Ramsay, the sadist's bow, no match for Jon's fury. He beat Ramsay to the ground, stopping only at Sansa's nod. Winterfell was theirs, the direwolf banner raised once more. The North rallied in the great hall, lords battered but proud. Lyanna Mormont stood, her voice clear. Jon Snow is no king by birth, but by deed. I name him king in the North. The hall erupted, swords raised, chants of king in the North shaking the rafters. Jon stood, Longclaw at his side, Sansa's smile steadying him. The crown was a burden, not a prize. But he accepted, the North his to lead. Bran Stark, now the three-eyed raven, arrived, his eyes distant. In the godswood, snow falling, he spoke. You're not Ned's son, Jon. You're Aegon Targaryen, son of Lyanna Stark, and Rhaegar Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne. The truth struck like a blade, Jon's world shifting. He was no bastard, but a prince, bound to a legacy he didn't want. Sansa's gaze held questions, the North's loyalty tied to a Stark. Jon's heart churned. Winterfell, the Watch, Ygritte, now this. Who was he if not Jon Snow? The North was his now, its people his charge. Jon stood in Winterfell's courtyard, snow dusting his cloak. Longclaw, a steady weight. The White Walkers loomed, a war beyond titles. He was king, but also a man, forged by loss and duty. The Godswood's heart tree watched, its red eyes silent. Jon's path was clear, but its end shrouded. He'd fight, as always, for those he loved. Jon's rise as king in the North is a triumph, but his Targaryen blood changes everything. Will he embrace this legacy, or remain a Stark at heart? Share your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more Game of Thrones sagas by subscribing and hitting the bell. The North lay under a shroud of frost, its winds carrying whispers of death. Jon Snow, king in the North, stood in Winterfell's godswood, snow dusting his black cloak, Longclaw, a steady weight at his side. At 22, his face bore the scars of battles, Hardhome's horror, Ramsay's cruelty, and the truth of his blood. Bran's revelation that Jon was Aegon Targaryen, son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, had shaken him, a crown he never sought. The White Walkers marched, their whites a tide of ice, and the North's banners were too few. Jon's grey eyes, once bright with honor, now held a grim resolve. To save his people, he needed allies, and only one name burned bright: Daenerys Targaryen, mother of dragons. Winterfell's great hall buzzed with dissent. Northern lords, loyal but wary, questioned Jon's plan. "A Targaryen?" Lyanna Mormont snapped, her young voice sharp. "They burned our kin." Sansa, Lady of Winterfell, stood by Jon, her auburn hair catching firelight. "We need her dragons," she said, voice calm but firm. Jon nodded, his decision made. He'd sail to Dragonstone, Daenerys' stronghold, to forge an alliance. Tormund Giantsbane, ever loyal, clapped Jon's shoulder. "Don't get burned, Crow." Jon smiled faintly, but his heart was heavy. Leaving the North felt like abandoning it. The journey south was a trial of wind and wave. Jon sailed with Davos seaworth, the sea a churning gray, Dragonstone's black cliffs rising like a dragon's spine. The island was a fortress of obsidian, its castle carved from dark stone, smoke curling from its towers. Daenerys Targaryen awaited in the throne room, her silver hair a cascade, violet eyes piercing. Her presence was fire, beautiful, unyielding, commanding. Dragons circled above, their roars shaking the air. "Why should I aid the North?" she asked, voice like steel. Her advisors, Tyrion Lannister, Varys, Missandei, watching closely. Jon stood tall, long claw sheathed. "The dead come for us all. Without your help, there's no North, no South, only death." Daenerys demanded Jon bend the knee, her dragons a silent threat. "I'm no lord to kneel," Jon said, his voice steady. "I'm here for my people." Tyrion, ever the diplomat, suggested a compromise. Dragonglass, a stone to kill whites, mined from Dragonstone's caves. Jon accepted, his men wielding picks under a scorching sun, the black glass sharp as fate. Daenerys watched him, her gaze a mix of curiosity and challenge. At night, by torchlight, they spoke of wars and losses. Her brother Rhaegar, Jon's father, unbeknownst to her. "You're not like other kings," she said, a faint smile breaking her fire. Jon's heart stirred, a warmth he hadn't felt since Ygritte. The alliance was fragile, trust hard-won. Jon proposed a daring plan. Capture a white to prove the White Walker's threat, rallying Westeros. Daenerys hesitated, her dragons too precious. Jon led a mission beyond the wall, taking Tormund, Jorah Mormont, Gendry Baratheon, and a handful of wildlings. The north was a frozen hell, snow blinding, ice cracking underfoot. They trekked through a gorge, breath steaming, long claw drawn. A white patrol attacked, their blue eyes glowing, flesh rotting. Jon's blade cut through, capturing one, its screeches echoing. But the Night King's army descended, whites swarming like locusts. The group fled to a frozen lake, ice splintering under their weight. They held a rocky outcrop, whites circling, the cold numbing their bones. Gendry ran for help, his hammer left behind. Jon fought, Longclaw a blur, Tormund's axe a brutal counterpoint. Hours passed, men falling, hope fading. A roar split the sky. Daenerys astride Drogon, her dragons unleashing fire. Flames consumed whites, the lake a sea of ash. Jon's heart surged, but the Night King struck, his ice spear piercing Viserion, the dragon crashing in a spray of blood. Daenerys' scream echoed, her grief raw. Jon urged her to flee, staying to cover their retreat. Whites overwhelmed him, ice closing over his head as he sank. Benjen Stark, long lost, emerged from the snow, his horse a specter. He pulled Jon free, fighting off whites, and thrust him onto his steed. "Go!" Benjen roared, swallowed by the dead. Jon rode, half frozen, to Eastwatch, where Daenerys waited, her eyes red with loss. Aboard her ship, wrapped in furs, Jon woke to her gaze. "I've seen them," she whispered, voice trembling. "We'll fight together." Jon took her hand, his voice hoarse. "I bend the knee." Their bond deepened, a spark igniting in the cold, unaware of their shared blood. Jon, her nephew, Aegon Targaryen. The white was shown in King's Landing, a gambit to unite the realm. Cersei Lannister, cold and cunning, promised aid, her word hollow. Jon and Daenerys sailed north, their love blooming in a candlelit cabin, hands entwined, lips meeting. The wall stood distant, its ice a fading shield. Jon's heart was torn. Daenerys' fire, the North's ice, his Targaryen blood. Winterfell awaited, but so did the dead, their march relentless. He was king, lover and heir, yet above all a man fighting for life itself. Winterfell braced for annihilation, its walls a fragile bulwark against the dead. Jon Snow, king in the north, stood in the great hall, maps strewn across the table, firelight casting shadows on his face. At 23, he was a man forged by loss. Ned, Ygritte, Daenerys' dragon, yet his grey eyes burned with purpose. The Night King's army marched, whites and white walkers a tide of ice, their numbers uncounted. Jon united Wildlings, Northerners, and Daenerys' forces, a coalition bound by desperation. Longclaw hung at his side, its wolf pommel steady, but the truth of his blood, Aegon Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne, gnawed at him. Daenerys, his lover and aunt, stood beside him, her silver hair gleaming, violet eyes fierce. Winterfell was their stand, the North's last hope. The hall was a storm of voices. Sansa, Lady of Winterfell, coordinated supplies, her calm a beacon. Arya, now a shadow of death, sharpened needle, her eyes distant. Bran, the three-eyed raven, spoke of the Night King's goal: to erase memory, to end life. "He wants me," Bran said, voice hollow. Jon's jaw tightened. Bran, his brother, was bait. Tormund roared for battle. Lyanna Mormont pledged her men. Tyrion offered strategy. Daenerys' dragons, Drogon and Rhaegal, were their greatest weapon, but her heart ached for Viserion, now a white. Jon's plan was grim. Draw the Night King to the Godswood, protect Bran, slay the leader. "If he falls, the dead fall," Jon said, voice steady. Daenerys nodded, her hand brushing his, a silent vow. Winterfell prepared, its walls bristling with dragonglass and steel. Archers lined the ramparts, trebuchets loaded, Dothraki and Unsullied arrayed in the fields. Jon walked the battlements, snow crunching, his cloak snapping in the wind. Sansa joined him, her breath clouding. "You love her," she said, voice soft. Jon's silence was answer enough. The Targaryen truth, revealed by Sam and Bran, hung between them. Jon, the rightful heir, a threat to Daenerys' claim. "The North needs you," Sansa said. Jon nodded, torn between duty and heart. The stars above offered no answers, only cold. The dead came at night, a shadow swallowing the horizon. War horns wailed, and the Battle of Winterfell began, a chaos of fire and ice. Jon rode Rhaegal, the dragon's wings a thunder, flames cutting through whites. Daenerys on Drogon burned swathes of the dead, her cries lost in the roar. Below, Tormund led Wildlings, their axes brutal, while Jaime Lannister and Brienne of Tarth held the walls, swords flashing. The Dothraki charged, their araks gleaming, only to be snuffed out, whites overwhelming. Jon's heart sank. The dead were endless, their blue eyes unyielding. Winterfell's gates buckled, whites pouring in, their claws tearing flesh. Jon landed Rhaegal, Longclaw drawn, cutting through corpses. The Night King rode Viserion, now a white, its blue flames searing the keep. Jon faced him in the sky, Rhaegal clashing with Viserion, claws rending scales. The Night King's spear gleamed, his gaze locked on Jon. A strike sent Jon crashing to the courtyard, Rhaegal wounded. Daenerys burned the Night King, but dragonfire failed. He stood, untouched, his spear raised. Jon staggered to his feet, Longclaw heavy, as whites closed in. The Godswood was the heart of the fight. Bran sat by the weirwood, ravens circling, his eyes white with vision. Arya guarded him, needle a blur, but whites swarmed. Jon fought to reach them, his blade carving a path, blood and ash mixing with snow. The Night King entered, his presence a cold void, his sword drawn. Jon charged, Longclaw clashing, but the king's strength was unnatural, each blow a test of will. In the chaos, Arya struck, a shadow from the dark, her dagger piercing the Night King's heart. He shattered, a scream of ice, and the whites fell, their blue eyes dimming. Winterfell stood, battered but alive. Jon found Arya by the weirwood, her face bloodied, needle still in hand. "You did it," he said, pulling her close. Daenerys landed, Drogon's wings folding, her relief palpable. The cost was staggering, half their forces gone, the keep scarred, Rhaegal wounded. Tormund clapped Jon's back, Lyanna Mormont's body among the fallen, her courage eternal. Sansa emerged, organizing survivors, her strength unyielding. Bran's eyes cleared, his voice calm. "It's not over," he said, a warning of battle south. The victory was hollow, the Targaryen truth a growing rift. Sam confirmed Jon's heritage, urging him to claim the Iron Throne. "You're the heir," Sam said, voice earnest. Jon shook his head, loyalty torn. Daenerys was his queen, his love, yet the North's trust lay with a Stark. At Winterfell's heart tree, Jon knelt, snow falling, Longclaw beside him. "Who am I?" he whispered, the red eyes silent. Daenerys found him, her touch warm. "We'll face Cersei together," she said, unaware of his claim. Jon nodded, heart heavy, the dead defeated, but a new war dawning. Winterfell's halls echoed with resolve, the North battered but unbroken. Jon stood on the ramparts, the horizon clear, yet shadows lingered. South, where power and betrayal waited. He was Aegon Targaryen, but also Jon Snow, forged by ice and fire. The battle for life was won, but the battle for the realm loomed, its cost unknown. Winterfell's victory over the Night King was a pyre of ash and blood, its scars fresh under a gray sky. Jon Snow, king in the north, stood on the ramparts, his black cloak dusted with snow, Longclaw heavy at his side. At 23, he was a man forged by sacrifice. Ned's honor, Ygritte's love, the Night's Watch's betrayal. The revelation of his true name, Aegon Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne, burned in his chest, a truth he shared with Daenerys Targaryen, his queen, his lover, his aunt. Her silver hair gleamed in Winterfell's courtyard, her violet eyes fierce with ambition, but the North's loyalty lay with Jon, a Stark in their hearts. The war for the Dawn was won, but the war for the South loomed. Cersei Lannister's treachery a shadow over Westeros. The great hall buzzed with plans. Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell, urged caution, her auburn hair catching firelight. "Cersei won't yield," she warned, her voice steady. Arya, a wraith of vengeance, sharpened needle, her eyes distant. Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys' advisor, proposed a swift march on King's Landing, his wit tempered by worry. Daenerys stood tall, Drogon's shadow behind her. "I'll take the Iron Throne," she declared, her voice fire. Jon nodded, torn. Her dream was justice, but her fire could consume all. His love for her warred with duty, the North's trust, and the weight of his Targaryen blood. "We end this together," he said, his hand brushing hers, a vow sealed in frost. The march south was a grueling trek, armies battered from Winterfell's battle. Jon rode with Daenerys, the unsullied and Dothraki, a sea of steel, Drogon soaring above. King's Landing rose on the horizon, its red keep a crown of stone, Cersei's banners mocking their approach. Jon's heart churned. War had cost him too much, yet peace demanded this fight. Daenerys' fleet, led by Yara Greyjoy, blockaded Blackwater Bay, while Tyrion negotiated with Cersei, her promises hollow. Jon stood by Daenerys on a hill, the city below a prize and a trap. "This is our destiny," she said, her eyes alight. Jon's silence hid his fear. Her fire was no longer just. The battle began with dragonfire. Daenerys, astride Drogon, unleashed hell, flames consuming scorpions and soldiers, walls crumbling under her wrath. Jon led the ground assault, Longclaw carving through Lannister ranks, his voice rallying Northmen and Wildlings. Tormund fought beside him, axe swinging, his grin fierce. The city gates fell, bells ringing surrender, but Daenerys did not stop. Drogon's fire swept streets, homes, and innocents. The city a sea of flame. Jon's heart sank, screams echoing as civilians burned. "Stop her!" Tyrion shouted, his face pale. Jon ran, ash choking his lungs, the Red Keep his goal. Inside the keep was chaos, stone cracking, flames licking walls. Jon found Daenerys in the throne room, the Iron Throne jagged before her, ash falling like snow. Her face was a mask of fury, her voice cold. They chose Cersei. They chose death. Jon stepped forward, Longclaw sheathed, his voice breaking. "This isn't justice, Dany. This is slaughter." She turned, violet eyes blazing. "I'll build a new world, Jon, with fire and blood." He saw her then, not his love, but a queen consumed, her dream a tyrant's crown. "I love you," he whispered, stepping close, their lips meeting, a kiss of salt and ash. His dagger slid between her ribs, her gasp soft, her body slumping against him. Drogon roared, but did not strike, his eyes meeting Jon's before melting the Iron Throne to slag and flying away. Jon held Daenerys, her silver hair tangled, blood pooling on stone. The throne room was silent, her dream dead with her. He wept, the dagger falling, his heart shattered. Guards seized him, Tyrion's voice distant, ordering his arrest. The North's banners, the unsullied spears, all blurred as Jon was chained, led to a cell. Sansa's face, Arya's rage, flashed in his mind. Winterfell, his home, lost again. The trial was swift. Bran, now king of the Six Kingdoms, presiding. "You saved us," Bran said, voice calm. "But justice demands exile." Jon was sentenced to the Night's Watch, a return to the Wall, his life a circle of ice. Castle Black greeted him with familiar cold, its stones unchanged, its brothers few. Jon stood atop the wall, snow falling, Longclaw a weight of memory. Tormund waited, his wildlings ready to roam north. "You're no crow anymore," Tormund said, clapping Jon's shoulder. Jon nodded, the carved wolf from Arya in his pocket, a tether to home. He rode beyond the wall, wildlings at his side, the north opening wide. Winterfell was Sansa's, the realm Bran's, but the wild was his. Ygritte's laugh, Daenerys's fire, Ned's honor. They lingered, scars on his soul. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, was no king, only a man seeking peace in the snow. The wall faded behind him, its ice a distant line. The north was free, but Jon's heart was heavy, each step a question. Who was he, without a crown, without her? The wind howled, carrying whispers of new threats, shadows in the frost. Jon's grip tightened on Longclaw, his path uncertain, but his will unbroken. The wild called, and he answered, a guardian forged by loss, ready for whatever lay beyond. The unyielding path of Jon Snow. The Nameless One rises. The wall stood as a sentinel of ice, its 700 feet of frost glistening under a sky devoid of stars, its surface weeping rivulets that froze in the midnight air. Castle Black, nestled at its base, was a relic of forgotten oaths, its towers sagging under the weight of centuries, its halls echoing with the ghosts of brothers long dead. Jon Snow, nearing 30, was a man carved by loss, Ned Stark's honor, Ygritte's fiery love, Daenerys Targaryen's blood on his hands. His black cloak, patched and worn from years of exile, hung heavy over broad shoulders, Longclaw's wolf pommel glinting faintly at his side. The scars of his life etched lines on his weathered face. His gray eyes weary yet unyielding, holding a spark that refused to die. Exiled to the Night's Watch after King's Landing's fall, Jon lived among the Wildlings, their hide tents dotting the snow beyond the wall, their fires a defiant glow against the endless cold. The Watch was a shadow. Its brothers dwindled to a dozen, their purpose buried with the Night King's shattered form. Yet the North whispered of a deeper chill, a darkness older than ice. And Jon's heart stirred, sensing a threat that no oath could name. The night was still, the air heavy with frost, when Mira burst into Castle Black's great hall, her footsteps a frantic echo on the stone floor. A wildling girl of 16, she was slight but fierce, her black hair tangled from the wind, her green eyes wide with terror that seemed to pierce the soul. Known among her people for visions, dreams that spoke truths others could not see, she collapsed before the fire, her breath ragged. "I saw it!" she gasped, her voice trembling, hands clutching her furs as if to ward off the cold within. A shadow with eyes like blood, swallowing the land, the stars, everything. Tormund Giantsbane, his red beard flecked with grey, his frame still broad as a bear, slammed his mug on the oaken table, ale sloshing over the rim. "3 villages gone, Snow," he growled, his blue eyes narrowing. "Nothing left but ash and runes, carved in stone like some cursed tongue." Jon's pulse quickened, the air thickening, a memory of Hardhome slaughter flashing, blue eyes, dead rising. Longclaw's weight was a call, its steel a promise. "Show me," he said, his voice low, steady, carrying the quiet command of a king who'd never worn a crown. Jon gathered a small band, each chosen for their strength or sight. Tormund, his axe slung across his back, was a pillar of loyalty, his humor a shield against the dark. Mira, her visions their guide, clutched a bone knife, her courage belying her youth. Meister Wolkan, a gnarled scholar who'd replaced Aemon, joined them, his satchel stuffed with Valyrian scrolls, his eyes bright with fear and fascination. Ed Tollett, a dour watch-brother, and a handful of wildlings completed the group, their faces grim under torchlight. They rode north at dawn, the wall's shadow fading behind, the land unfolding as a wasteland of snow and silence. Twisted trees clawed at the sky, their branches brittle, as if life itself had fled. Mira's voice trembled as she spoke of her dreams, red eyes, a void that devoured hope, a world drowned in dark. Tormund's jests were few, his grip tight on his axe. "Fort walkers, giants worse," he muttered, breath steaming. "This feels like the end." Wolkan, hunched in his saddle, clutched a scroll, its edges frayed. "The old texts speak of things before the children," he said, voice barely above the wind. "A shadow older than gods." Jon's jaw tightened, Longclaw's hilt cold under his glove. The North had broken him before, but this was no enemy of steel, it was something ancient, hungry. Their first sign came at a wildling village, or what remained of it. Tents were ash, fires long dead. The snow blackened as if scorched by shadow. Bodies lay strewn, their flesh drained to husks, eyes wide in silent screams. Jon knelt by one, a child, her small hand clutching a carved bone. "No wounds," he murmured, his voice thick. Tormund kicked a stone, cursing. "This ain't natural." Mira's breath hitched, her eyes darting. "It was here," she whispered, pointing to a slab of rock. Runes glowed faintly, their curves alien, older than any Jon had seen. Wolkan dropped to his knees, tracing them with trembling fingers. "Valyrian," he breathed, "but older, from before the doom. They speak of the Nameless One, a void born before the Dawn Age, sealed, by the children's blood and fire. Jon's blood ran cold, his Targaryen heritage a sudden weight. The Night King, a terror of ice, had been a pawn, created to shatter this seal. His death, Arya's dagger in his heart, had weakened it, and now the Nameless One stirred, its hunger vast. The runes demanded a key. Royal blood, Targaryen blood, Jon's blood. They pressed on, Mira's visions leading to a cavern of ice, its entrance a jagged maw in a frozen cliff, frost glittering like 1,000 eyes. The air inside was thick, the walls pulsing with cold, as if the cavern breathed. Torches flickered, casting shadows that moved against nature. Bodies lay deeper within. Wildlings, their flesh drained, faces twisted in agony, runes circling them like a curse. Volcan's scroll trembled in his hands, its ink glowing faintly. "The Nameless One is no creature," he said, voice shaking. "It's a void, older than the Great Other, a hunger that consumes life, memory, light. The children bound it with blood sacrifices, dragon fire, and weirwood roots, but the Night King's fall loosened its chains." Jon's mind raced. Daenerys's fire, his Targaryen blood, the wall's ice. "Can it be killed?" he asked, gripping Longclaw. Vulcan's eyes darted. "Longclaw, forged anew with blood and fire, might wound it. But the cost—" His voice trailed off, fear swallowing the rest. The cavern shook, a low hum rising, and shadows moved, not cast by their light, but alive. Wraiths, spectral forms with claws of mist, surged from the dark, their shrieks tearing at the mind, a cacophony of despair. Jon swung Longclaw, its steel biting through shadow, each strike a flare of light, but the wraiths were endless, their touch cold as death. Tormund roared, his axe cleaving, blood mixing with frost on his furs. Mira clung to Vulcan, her bone knife slashing, her screams defiant. Ed, steady at first, faltered, his eyes glazing as he raised his sword against Tormund, manipulated by the Void's will. "It's in him," Mira cried, her voice piercing the chaos. Jon tackled Ed, pinning him, the man's screams fading as the wraiths retreated, their laughter echoing. "It controls," Vulcan gasped, clutching his scroll. "It feeds on will, on pain." Jon bound Ed, his heart heavy, another brother lost, not to steel but to shadow. They fled the cavern, camping in a snowbound grove, the stars hidden by clouds. Vulcan unrolled his scroll, its runes glowing like embers. "The Nameless One was the children's fear," he said, voice low. "Before Valyria, before dragons, it nearly consumed the world. The first men fought it, their bronze useless, until the children wove a spell. Blood of kings, fire of gods, roots of weirwoods. The seal held, but the Night King was its herald, meant to free it." Jon's breath clouded, memories of Daenerys's fire, Ned's honor flashing. "My blood," he said, voice hard. "It wants me." Vulcan nodded, eyes grim. "Longclaw can be forged anew, with your blood in a ritual flame. It may wound the void, but it could claim you." Tormund gripped Jon's shoulder, his voice rough. "You've faced death before, Snow. You'll do it again." Mira's eyes were distant, her voice a whisper. "I see a wasteland, red eyes rising. If you don't stop it, Westeros falls." Days later, they reached a second village, its ruins fresher, the snow blacker, as if the void had lingered. A lone survivor, a wildling elder, spoke of dreams, shadows that whispered names, promising peace for surrender. "It took my sons," she wept, her hands clawing the air. Jon's resolve hardened, the elder's grief a mirror to his own. They found more runes, their glow brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Wolkan's scroll burned in his hands, its ink flaring as he read. The Nameless One seeks a vessel, a king's blood to walk the world. Jon's heart pounded, the weight of Aegon Targaryen crushing. Mira's visions grew vivid, a rift in the earth, a valley where the void rose, its eyes drowning the stars. The final trek led to a frozen valley, its snow black as ash, the air thick with unnatural cold, as if the world held its breath. Mira's dreams pinpointed the heart, a rift in the ground, jagged and pulsing with shadow, like a wound in the earth. Jon led, long claw drawn, its blade steady, the others close. The wind howled, carrying whispers of his past. Ned's voice, stern and kind. "You are a Stark." Ygritte's laugh, sharp and warm. "You know nothing," Daenerys' plea, soft and desperate. "Build the world with me." Each was a dagger, cutting deeper than steel. Tormund's axe swung at his side, his eyes scanning the dark. "Feels like we're walking into hell," he muttered. Mira clutched her knife, her breath shallow, while Wolkan whispered chants from his scroll, his voice a frail shield. The rift opened, a storm of darkness rising, its red eyes piercing like blood, each a furnace of hate. The Nameless One was no form, only a void that warped the world, snow twisting into visions, Winterfell burning, Sansa's scream, Arya's wolf shattered, Bran's ravens falling. "Join me," it hissed, its voice a thousand screams, a cacophony that clawed at the mind. Ned appeared, his gray eyes heavy. "Rest, Jon," he said, hand outstretched. Ygritte stepped from the dark, her red hair flowing, her laugh a wound. "Come with me, Jon Snow." Daenerys emerged, silver hair aglow, her voice soft. "We'll rule together, no more pain." Jon's hand shook, Longclaw's runes, etched by Wolkan in a ritual of Jon's blood and sacred fire, pulsing with light, a beacon in the dark. The void's temptations grew, memories twisting, Robb's laughter, Rickon's run, the wall's ice crumbling. Jon's knees buckled, the weight of his losses crushing. "I am no king," he roared, voice raw, rising to his feet. He struck, Longclaw flaring like a star, its blade tearing through shadow, each swing a defiance of despair. The void screamed, a sound that shook the valley, its eyes dimming as the rift trembled. Tormund's axe cleaved, his bellows a war cry, while Mira chanted, her voice a thread of hope, her visions guiding Jon's strikes. Wolkan's scroll burned, its ashes rising, a final sacrifice. The Nameless One retreated, its form collapsing, its laugh echoing. "You delay, not destroy. I am eternal." The rift sealed, the valley still, snow falling soft, no longer black. Jon staggered, Longclaw heavy, his chest heaving, blood dripping from a gash on his arm. Tormund caught him, his grin fierce. "You're a mad bastard, Snow." Mira's eyes cleared, her breath steady, her visions shifting. Wolkan, pale but alive, clutched a new scroll, its runes faint. "It's not gone," he whispered. "Only weakened." Jon nodded, the fight carved in his bones, his Targaryen blood a curse and a weapon. Castle Black welcomed them, its fires a frail warmth against the cold. Jon stood in the hall, the watch's few brothers gathered, their faces grim but resolute. Mira spoke of new visions, a temple in Essos, Valyrian ruins where secrets of the Nameless One lay buried, perhaps a way to end it. Wolkan pored over his scrolls, his quill scratching, his eyes bright with purpose. Tormund clapped Jon's back, his voice booming. "To hell and back, eh? Let's do it again." Jon smiled faintly. the carved wolf from Arya in his pocket, a tether to Winterfell, to home. Sansa ruled the north, Bran the realm. Arya sailed west, each a light in the dark, their strength his own. The watch had a purpose again, its oath renewed. I am the shield that guards the realms of men. Jon climbed the wall at dawn, snow swirling, Longclaw at his side, its runes a faint glow. The north stretched wide, its plains vast, its secrets buried in frost. He stood atop the ice, the wind fierce, carrying echoes of his past, Ned's lessons, Ygritte's taunts, Daenerys' love. The Nameless One lingered, a shadow beyond the horizon, its red eyes waiting. Jon's heart was heavy, but his will unbroken. He was no king, no heir, only Jon Snow, a guardian forged by ice and fire, ready for the next battle. The stars above were faint, but they held, a promise of light in the dark. Essos called, its ruins a challenge, and Jon would answer, as he always had, with steel and heart. The wilds stretched before him, a land of freedom and peril. Jon's path was unwritten, but he knew its truth, to protect, to endure, to fight. The Nameless One was a threat beyond Westeros, beyond time, but so was he, a man of the north, a brother of the Watch, a Stark and Targaryen bound by blood and oath. He stepped forward, snow crunching, the wall behind him, the future ahead. Whatever lay in wait, he would face it, as he'd faced all else, with courage carved in snow. Jon's battle with the Nameless One is only the start, a shadow that threatens all he holds dear. Where will his journey lead? Essos' ancient ruins, or deeper into the wild's heart? Share your theories in the comments, give this saga a like, and subscribe to join us for more Game of Thrones epics. Dive into our playlist for Arya's adventures and beyond, and let's uncover the North's next chapter together.